This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. And boy, oh boy, good golly, god damn it, do we have one hell of an episode for you.
Damn, we sure do. We sure do.
Well, of course, up top, please like, subscribe, rate, tell a friend, tell your family, spread the gospel of Creep Street. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. And then on our Facebook, there is a separate page called Citizens of the Milky Way. It's a little forum where daily we interact with our listeners, updating, posting articles, funny little quips and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, you know, just the good stuff.
And of course, if once a week is not enough, we also have a Patreon where you can support the show and get all sorts of goodies at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
That's right.
A quick announcement. As we know, we will be at the Days of the Dead Festival in November.
Yes.
But good golly, buckle up for this announcement. Creep Street will be coming live to Chicago's C2E2, the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo.
That's right.
We will be there all weekend, but on Friday, December 10th at 7 p.m., Creep Street will be live.
We will be performing a live show, Creep Street Live and Undead.
That's right, live and undead. We will have, the panel is from 7 to 8 on December 10th. When we get more information, we will let you know, but we are very excited.
Oh my God, we cannot believe it.
I love C2E2. I've been going for years. It's great. It's a big comics and entertainment convention.
Oh my God, yeah.
Video games, wrestling, horror, comics, obviously, movies, lots of, I think this year John Cena's going to be there.
Oh my gosh.
It's so fun, and we are honored to be coming live and in person because they're doing it part in person, part online. We are very lucky and happy to be bringing Creep Street Live and Undead to the McCormick Center in Chicago, Illinois.
So cool.
All right. Well, good golly. Let me tell you something. October, we are a week deep in August. 7 days deep.
We're getting to it. And I'll be honest, it's been good. It's been feeling good. It's been spooky. We've been watching some great spooky, scary movies and TV shows.
We started off October last week with a classic. Like I said, it was like a classic Universal monster movie.
Yeah, just weird, creepy,
right.
Just kind of shocking.
A mad doctor doing horrible things in his lap. Wonderful Halloween tale. But now, today we are talking about one of the big daddies of the paranormal. This is, of not just the paranormal, just pop culture in general.
Oh my God, for sure.
Maureen, what the hell are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Ouija.
Ooh, baby.
We will be talking about the origins of the Ouija board as well as just talking boards in general. We will be telling scary stories and accounts with the Ouija board. And we also will be giving some tips and some ideas if you do decide to go forward and try for yourself.
That's right. Our Patreon listeners will know we listed these tips back in our Patreon episode in July, and now because this is going to be this is a thick episode. The episode's thick.
She's thick. She's thick.
We are packing it in. We wanted to get some scary fucking stories.
Oh yeah,
because this is a pop culture icon. The Ouija board, specifically the name Ouija or Ouija. I hear say, and I've heard people say it can go. You can say it both ways.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a tomato situation.
Right. I think it's acceptable to say Ouija or Ouija. So sometimes if we accidentally alternate, as far as I understand,
it's kosher, baby.
No matter how you want to say it, we love it either way. Now, this is such a fascinating history. Maureen, what are some of your sources? I'm going to wait to tell mine until it's my portion of the show.
You got it. My first source for today was an article from Smithsonian Magazine entitled The Strange and Mysterious History of the Ouija Board, Tool of the Devil, Harmless Family Game, or Fascinating Glimpse into the Non-Conscious Mind by Linda Rodriguez McRobbie. Also, another fantastic source was the Talking Board Historical Society at tbhs.org. Robert Murch is the chairman of the board and the president of the Talking Board Historical Society, and we will be hearing quotes from him throughout today's episode. So, a Ouija board.
Ouija board.
What even is it?
What the hell are we even talking about?
Literally, who could know? We're going to try to figure it out, though.
Please.
So for those of you who have not seen a Ouija board, it is essentially the same size, I would say, as your average board game. It's just a board, non-shockingly.
Right.
And it has all of the letters on the board as well as 0 through 9. And then it says yes, no, as well as hello and goodbye. And the idea is you use a object called a planchette on top of it, and everyone in the room kind of touches the planchette, and the planchette will move around the board to tell a message or something from the other side, be it a ghost, be it a negative entity, be it a benevolent entity.
Right.
I don't know. That's for you to decide, Creep.
That's for you to decide.
I'd like to read a portion just directly from the Talking Board Historical Society, just to kind of make sure we're getting it right.
Please,
get it from.
Got to read it right from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Talking boards are historically significant, having existed in one form or another since shortly after 1848, the birth of modern spiritualism. Most Americans are aware of the most famous talking board, Ouija, first introduced in 1890 by the Kennard Novelty Company and sold today by Hasbro, Inc. What they don't know is that since the beginning, the Ouija board faced fierce competition from other manufacturers who produced hundreds of different yet colorful talking board variations. These were sold, enjoyed, and eventually discarded only to be remade and rediscovered by new generations. Therefore, these boards represent an enduring pop culture phenomenon and an important lost art form.
Well, there you go.
So this take of the talking board is clearly very positive.
Yes.
Very pro talking board, pro Ouija.
Right.
Just keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we talked about, or we mentioned in that article just then, spiritualism. And we've talked a little bit about spiritualism before in the past. It really was popping off in like the mid-1800s, the Victorian era, as it were. Spiritualism is the idea that we can communicate with the other side or other realms, especially ghosts / loved ones, lost loved ones.
Right.
And this movement, this idea of being able to connect with the other side really offered solace to a lot of people in this time where the average lifespan was less than 50 years old. These talking boards really picked up popularity during and after the Civil War, during World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, Vietnam, and actually right now they're having a big resurgence, as you might imagine. Now, spiritualism really hit hard in America in 1848 with the popularity of these sisters called the Fox Sisters who lived in upstate New York. They said that they could receive messages from the other side from rapping. And I don't mean that kind of rapping, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like knocking on doors and on windows, walls, floors, all over the place. Kind of a...
So not spit and rhyme.
Not spit and rhymes, but they're spending time knocking around these friggin' houses.
There you go.
Yeah, so the idea is kind of the knock once for yes, knock two for no, and that's kind of how they would communicate with the other side. And they really, really gained a huge amount of popularity, did a bunch of road shows. You may consider them the Creep Street podcast of their day.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way to think it.
Yeah. No, but they actually were saying like they were mediums and they could connect with the other side. And eventually they did come forward and say that it was all a hoax. But then they came forward and said that it wasn't a hoax. So it's kind of a crazy story, the Fox sisters, that really deserve an episode of their own.
We will definitely
do that. But in 1848 is when they really brought spiritualism really to the forefront of everyone's minds. And at the time it was really accepted. It didn't have this weird kind of stigma that using a talking board or a Ouija board has today.
Yeah.
It's like, it was actually, the church had no problems with it, had no qualms. So in the Smithsonian article, it even says like, you could do a seance on Saturday night and go to church on Sunday and not feel guilty.
I remember there was a Ouija board in an episode of I Love Lucy.
Yes. That's mentioned in this article too. That's so funny.
I remember seeing the episode when I was little. It was like a rerun on TV Land or something. And there's like, she has a friend who's like a psychic. And I remember he asks her, he goes, do you Ouija? And it was, even up in recent history, when it was still okay.
Oh, absolutely. And during this time, it was really it was even kind of considered to be wholesome. Like you could do it with the whole family.
Right.
It was an activity, something to do. And like I said, too, this was a really, really hard time to be alive. So there were a lot of people and loved ones that were dying that maybe you didn't really get closure with, or you don't even know really what happened. They just went away to war and they just never came home. You didn't hear anything. It was a really, really rough time. So this rapping situation wasn't the only way that people were engaged in spiritualism at the time. They also would do this thing called table turning, which is where everyone would put their hands on the table and then a table would move. Yeah. They also did this thing called automatic writing, where you could use a planchette actually, or to just kind of let the planchette guide your hand. So you write what the spirit is coming forth and kind of telling through you. That's an idea. And then there was, of course, the talking board.
And by the way, there are dozens and dozens of different methods people used.
Oh my God.
Like automatic writing. The book Hell House, they list so many different cyclical phenomenon that have been reported and recorded. Very interesting stuff.
That book is so scary.
So scary.
Oh my God. If you want a spooky read for Halloween, it's Hell House. It is so fucking scary.
Richard Matheson. I think he also wrote I Am Legend, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of I think Stephen King has said it was a big inspiration for his work, like especially like The Shining and whatnot.
Right.
Very freaky stuff, but keep going. Sorry about that.
So there were lots of different ways to kind of engage in spiritualism, including the talking board. But Charles Kennard was kind of the first guy to really say, let's make money off of this. So Charles Kennard in 1890 made the move to get a patent for a talking board. He got a group of investors together, and together they created the Kennard Novelty Company. So they decided they were going to apply for a patent and start selling these talking boards, but they needed a name.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people think that Ouija is oui, yes, in French, and ja, yes, in German, and together it would be Ouija or Ouija or Ouija, but really that appears to not be the case. Some of the investors of the board actually got together and asked the board what it should be called, and it spelled out Ouija. When they asked what it meant, all it said back was good luck. But there was a woman in the room who was a medium, and she was wearing a locket with a photo of a famous female rights activist named Ouida, O-U-I-D-A. So maybe that had something to do with it too. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. But it's interesting that apparently the name came from the board.
The board named itself.
It named itself. Very interesting. Because like we know, Ouija
is a trademark name.
It's like Kleenex.
It's like Kleenex, or you're right, or Coca-Cola, or anything. It's the spirit boards are the actual thing, or talking boards, whatever you want to call them. Ouija is just the branded version.
Yeah, and it was kind of one of the first ones that got made back in the 1800s, and the name just kind of stuck, and so now it's kind of synonymous with talking boards, when really, like you said, Ouija is a brand.
Right.
So finally they had a name for their talking board, the Ouija board, and now they were ready to apply for a patent. Now I'd like Dylan to read an excerpt from Smithsonian Magazine.
Knowing that if they couldn't prove that the board worked, they wouldn't get their patent, Bond brought the indispensable Peters, an investor's relative and strong medium, to the patent office in Washington with him when he filed his application. There, the chief patent officer demanded a demonstration. If the board could accurately spell out his name, which was supposed to be unknown to Bond and Peters, he'd allow the patent application to proceed. They all sat down, communed with the spirits, and the planchette faithfully spelled out the patent officer's name. Whether or not it was mystical spirits or the fact that Bond, as a patent attorney, may have just known the man's name, well, that's unclear. But on February 10th, 1891, a white-faced and visibly shaken patent officer awarded Bond a patent for his new toy or game.
So there you go.
So literally the patent officer got a first-hand showing.
Exactly. And it was just like, it's so funny to think either way, if either the Ouija board worked and was able to guess his name, or if they actually knew his name and he didn't know that they knew his name, whatever. It's a great story.
It's a great story. It's a great story.
And it's also very interesting. There would end up being a lot of turnover about who owned the Ouija company or who owned Kennard Novelty Company. It changed hands a lot between the investors and also lower people moving on up.
Right.
So like we said, it was really kind of normal at the time when it came out, and really even after it came out, like you said, about the I Love Lucy episode.
Right.
There was even a Norman Rockwell painting of a couple playing with the Ouija board on the cover of one issue of the Saturday Evening Post.
Wow.
In 1967, Parker Brothers bought the game and it sold 2 million copies, outselling Monopoly.
Good God.
Isn't that crazy?
Outselling Monopoly. What year was that?
1967. So a big, crazy, intense year.
Big year
America.
for Ouija, baby.
And a big year for Ouija and a good year for Hasbro. God bless. Wish you well for that.
It's so funny because
Parker Brothers, I should say. Excuse me.
I was going to say Parker Brothers, Hasbro. These are like this is also where you buy Operation.
Exactly.
Or Chutes and Ladders. You know, these are classic.
It's so weird.
Board game companies.
Because it used to just be normal. So it wasn't, people were just okay with it.
You're right. Absolutely.
But something changed. In 1973, a movie called The Exorcist came out.
Oh boy.
A little known film. I know you've probably never seen it. But it actually changed everything about pop culture. Yeah. And our society, really, to be honest. Reagan, in the movie, the little girl who is possessed by a demon while using a Ouija board. And this movie scared people so much that all sorts of people, including religious groups, denounced using a Ouija board and thought of it as a way to communicate with Satan or with demons.
Right.
Now it's sold by Hasbro, and it still sells a lot of copies, but now it's kind of bought for a different reason. It's bought out of fear rather than spiritualism.
Right.
People are now so buying it because it's exciting and dangerous and kind of gives you a little bit of adrenaline. Whereas before it was a way to try to just curiously connect with the other side. So just because it's more recently been attributed with the demonic or the frightening or the negative, there have always been weird things that have happened, things that people have done in the name of the Ouija board.
Right.
Here is another direct quote. In 1921, the New York Times reported that a Chicago woman being sent to a psychiatric hospital tried to explain to doctors that she wasn't suffering from mania, but that Ouija spirits had told her to leave her mother's dead body in the living room for 15 days before burying her in the backyard. In 1930, newspaper readers were thrilled to read accounts of 2 women in Buffalo, New York, who murdered another woman, supposedly on the encouragement of the Ouija board messages. In 1941, a 23-year-old gas station attendant from New Jersey told the New York Times that he joined the Army because the Ouija board told him to. In 1958, a Connecticut court decided not to honor the Ouija board will of Mrs. Helen Doe Peck, who left 1,000 to 2 former servants and an insane $152,000 to John Gale Forbes, a lucky but bodiless spirit who contacted her via her Ouija board.
Wow. I like that Uncle Sam got to somebody. Got him to join the army.
I know, right? Got him through the damn thing.
Got him through the
damn
Ouija
spirits.
board.
So there's always been weird things that have been attributed to the Ouija board. And of course, there have been other murders that people have said that they were told to do it because of Ouija boards. There are lots of scary stories of people doing things because they think the Ouija board told them to do it. Now, of course, one thought is that there is something paranormal going on.
Right.
And I want to talk about that. But let's talk about a possible scientific explanation. Now, the Smithsonian Magazine is one of these sources that thinks that this is not a paranormal occurrence.
Okay, because I got plenty that say it is.
Yes, exactly.
Ooh,
so we got to get this out of the way.
I got some stories for you folks.
Yes. This is what Smithsonian Magazine says is happening. Ouija boards are not, scientists say, powered by spirits or even demons. Disappointing but also potentially useful because they're powered by us, even when we protest that we're not doing it. We swear. Ouija boards work on a principle known to those studying the mind for more than 160 years. The Ideometer Effect. In 1852, physician and physiologist William Benjamin Carpenter published a report for the Royal Institution of Great Britain examining these automatic muscular movements that take place without the conscious will or volition of the individual. Think crying in reaction to a sad film, for example. Almost immediately, other researchers saw applications of the Ideometer Effect in the popular spiritualist pastimes. In 1853, chemist and physicist Michael Faraday, intrigued by table turning, conducted a series of experiments that proved to him, though not to most spiritualists, that the table's motions were due to the ideomotor actions of the participants. This is interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That people have these unconscious or subconscious or non-conscious, however you want to call it.
Right.
These movements that they're completely unaware that are happening and they're not trying to do anything at all, and this is happening. This is interesting, but it also makes me wonder, how does it end up being cohesive so much of the time? Because if it's just completely random, how could that happen? But maybe the idea is, too, that, there is this one expert that said, you do much better with the Ouija on questions than you really don't think you know, but actually something inside you does know, and the Ouija can help you answer above chance. So the idea is basically you know more than you think you know, and maybe with your intuition, you're able to figure out more than you think, and by using the Ouija board, you can kind of be able to read your own mind.
Right. Oh, yeah, in a weird way.
That is a really cool thought.
It is an interesting way to think about it.
And there's even one of the directors at the Talking Board Historical Society, that said that she likes to use the Ouija board as a tool for exploring the expansive realms of consciousness. So maybe it's a way of kind of like what we've talked about before, if something is just happening in our mind. Is it all in our head, or is something being kind of like sent through us, through our head? Or maybe we are able to access a different level of consciousness through this that we're not really aware that is happening. And it just because it's happening in your head doesn't mean that it's not truly happening.
Right. Right.
What we've kind of talked about before. So the Ouija board can really be used for so many different things and can be so fascinating. But even though these people at Smithsonian believe that this is all that there is to it, some people firmly disagree and say that this is a surefire way to connect with the other side, with other entities, with ghosts, with lost loved ones, and that it's really something to not fool around with.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dylan, tell us, what is going on?
Oh, I've got some freaky-ass stories.
Oh,
this
baby.
is what you've been waiting for, Creep Street. It's October.
Woohoo!
We're taking the gloves off.
Okay, come on.
I'm going to wait and give you my sources at the end. I just don't want to spoil anything.
I know, because headlines these days are just insane.
So, a frightening Ouija story happened in 2014 to a woman named Angela Jackson. Angela was a mother of 2 and had always had a fascination with the paranormal and the afterlife. And after her father passed away, this fascination kind of grew. Well, one evening, Angela was hanging out at a friend's place when the friend brought up the suggestion of using a Ouija board. And Angela was somewhat familiar with Ouija boards, but had no real experience with them and wasn't hesitant to try. She'd also hadn't been grown up in a place where they forbade them or anything. It just wasn't something on her periphery, even though she was kind of interested in the paranormal and the afterlife. So she wasn't hesitant to try. Well, they had barely begun when they made contact with an entity that also called itself Angela.
Oh, God.
Well, this immediately unsettled the living Angela. In an interview with The Mirror, Angela said,
"My heart thudded with excitement as we all placed our index fingers lightly on the bottom of an upturned whiskey glass they'd placed on the table. It began to pull in every direction. 'Who is it you want to speak to?' Robert, my neighbor, asked. The glass started moving toward the letters, spelling out A-N-G-E-L-A. The spirit wanted to speak to me, but then it spelt out, 'Die, bitch.' 'That's not funny,' I said. But Robert said, 'Angela, we didn't do anything.' He snatched his finger back from the glass, and we all shrieked as the living room door slammed shut on its own. My voice quivering, I asked, 'Who are you?' With only my finger on the glass, it moved faster. 'I was murdered,' it scrawled, 'just like you're going to be.' Angela, terrified, asked again, 'Who are you?' And the glass quickly spelt out S-A-T-A-N. She then screamed, 'I'm not scared, to hell with you.' And with that, the tumbler flew off the table and smashed into the wall. Leaping up, my neighbors slammed on the lights and blew out the candles. 'We should never do this again,' he said. But they weren't the ones who'd been told they were going to be murdered. I needed to know more.
So this is an experience. This is what Angela was telling The Mirror.
Wow.
So not only did it say it was Angela, but then it said, 'Die, bitch.'
What the fuck? That is so fucking scary.
This story gets wild.
Okay.
This is Halloween, baby. Get ready. Buckle up, Creep Street. Well, as terrifying as this experience was, Angela was determined to connect with this entity again. She used the board on a daily basis for several months, but nothing came of it. But then came the nightmares. At night, in her dreams, Angela would be haunted by a menacing male figure who brandished a hammer. She wasn't sure, but she knew somehow these weird dreams were somehow related to that experience she had had with the Ouija board, that first weird experience. So she took this as a sign to stop playing with the board, which she did, but the dreams continued. But one night, something happened to Angela that wasn't a dream. And it was something that suddenly made all these weird messages become clear. Angela describes in that interview what happened.
I locked the front door of my flat, then started walking down the concrete steps in the stairwell. From behind me, I heard a voice. 'Die, bitch,' it growled. I froze at the sound of those words. Shaking with fear, I turned to see a man in a white t-shirt emerging from the shadows wielding a claw hammer. I screamed as he brought the weapon down on my head with a sickening thud. He hit me again, and warm blood began trickling down my face. I couldn't see where my attacker was. I just wanted to get away. Drenched in blood, I made it to the front door and then collapsed. Waking in the hospital, I felt confused and groggy. 'You were attacked,' a doctor explained. 'You've suffered a fractured skull.' I lived in fear that whoever it was would return and finish the job, just as the spirit had warned through the Ouija board. It's been 6 years now since the attack. No one has ever been caught, and I'm still scared the spirit's prediction will one day come true. But now I'm warning all of you, never mess with Ouija boards. You don't know what evil lurks in the afterlife."
Now, this one's interesting because was it warning her? Was it telling her?
Right.
Because it said, "Die, bitch," but was it quoting what was going to happen? You know what I mean?
I don't. Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. Was whatever they were speaking to in that initial seance or whatever, was that saying to her, die, bitch? Like, I want you to die? Or was it like an echo warning her? Like, was it that person's voice she heard that she would hear again? Because that was a real...
Oh, I see what you mean.
That was a home invader.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Or was it playing her an echo of that person's voice from the future, like a warning?
Right. Oh, that's so freaky. I don't know.
Or what sounds like what she's scared about, was that a regular person who became possessed by this thing that wants her dead, and will it try again?
Will it try again? Oh my God, that's so scary.
How fucking freaky is that?
Oh, that would just... Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Horrified.
Yeah.
Well, next is a terrifying tale from Perth in Western Australia. This was originally posted about on a site called liveabout.com. The poster went by the name Joe. Well, Joe was 15 years old when he had friends at his house one day, and they busted out the old Ouija board.
Oh.
Well, even at 15, Joe was very skeptical about all this stuff, yet he went along with it. And yeah, the planchette did move. Joe thought it was probably just his friends moving it, whether they were meaning to or not. In fact, Joe said the whole experience was kind of boring overall. And for this particular session, they used a glass as a planchette, which they did in the first story too. Sometimes, however, after that interaction though, Joe suddenly, the 15-year-old Joe, would find himself waking up every night on the dot at 3:15 in the morning.
No, stop it, Amityville Horror.
He'd be soaked in a cold sweat with the feeling that there was someone in the room watching him. He'd awake with this feeling of terror inside him, yet he didn't know why exactly. And while this seemed to keep happening, Joe would wake up in terror, but then it would subside when he'd look around, and of course there was no one there. It was just like he was having some weird dream every night that kept waking him up at 3:15.
Oh, God.
But one night, though, when Joe was awakened at 3:15, there was something there. In the middle of his bedroom floor was the glass they had used as a planchette on the Ouija board.
No.
This was especially weird because the family had actually thrown out that glass while cleaning out clutter. And I think the game might have been someone else's. I don't know if it was his Ouija board or whatnot, but it was the glass they had used.
Oh my God.
In his post, Joe describes what happened next.
I was certain that the glass was the reason for my sleepless nights. I once again disposed of the glass, however, I kept experiencing the same feelings. And once again, upon inspection, I came across the same glass that I had already thrown in the garbage twice. This time I was determined to get rid of it, so I took it outside and I smashed it on the ground. I continued waking up at 3:15 a.m. to the minute every night without fail, and I started seeing strange, dark shadows. The shadows started as perfect black balls which would circle my room and then seemed to disappear through my window. I put this off to paranoia and lack of sleep and simply tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but still with my head under the covers. Other people started noticing the shadow too, and at normal waking hours, saying that the end of the house where my room was seemed to be a bit creepy. Gradually, the shadows seemed to get bigger, but I continued to ignore them until one night. The family dog woke me up again at 3:15 a.m. He was sitting next to my bed and he was making a crying sound. I figured the dog needed to go out, so I got up and let him outside. And as soon as I walked back to bed, the dog was at my window, squeaking and carrying on. So I got back up and I let him back inside. The dog followed me to my room and once again sat by my bed whimpering. I then took him back outside, and even though he sat at my window, still crying, I made him stay out there for a bit, because I didn't want him coming back in and waking me up. I eventually gave in and let the dog back inside. The bathroom light was on, letting light flood the hallway as I walked back to my room, where the dog started growling. I moved closer to the bathroom door so the dog could see it was me, as I was worried he was growling at my shadow. I called him up to me as he was still growling and said, "Hey, it's only me, come here, what's the matter?" The dog walked slowly toward me, still growling, and sat next to my leg, growling at something behind me. In a flash, my thoughts raced to, oh my God, there's someone in the house, and I turned around and started running down the hallway. What I saw was something that has never left my mind and something no one has ever believed when I've told them. I saw what seemed to be like a huge bird. It had huge, outstretched wings that would have touched the roof and almost the floor. Its body ended where the wings did, and neither seemed to touch the ground, as if it followed me down the hallway. The wings stayed outstretched, and it seemed to glide as it moved. I did notice a small head between the wings, but no features that I recall, and the head seemed to be hooded rather than round and connected to the body without a neck. The creature seemed more shadow-like than in flesh, and as much as I have tried to put it down to my own shadow, I'm certain that what I experienced and saw was real, and could have in no way been my own shadow. I remember mostly the wings and the enormity of them as they towered over me, and how it moved as it followed after me until I slipped into another room.
That is so scary. I hate shit with big birds or winged beasts like this.
I know.
It freaks me out so much.
Freaky shit.
Oh, God.
Well, as we all know, with the birth of the internet, it's ushered in a whole new era of myths and legends. For example, Slender Man.
Yes.
And I think a more recent one is like Siren Head or something. I don't really know much about him, but...
Okay.
Well, of all of these recent and terrifying legends, one of the most famous is a demon who apparently goes by the name Zozo.
Of course.
And for whatever reason, it seems this entity is particularly associated with spirit boards and those who play with them. This legend has sort of captured the imagination of folks over the past few years. If you go to YouTube and you look up Zozo, you'll find all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while Zozo is how the entity most often identifies itself, my source says that it has also gone by other names, typically variations of Zozo, but also as Mama and even as Pazuzu, which you'll remember is the demon from The Exorcist, which also happens, I believe, to be an ancient... It's a real figure from ancient, I think, maybe Sumerian demonology.
I believe so.
Something like that. But yeah, it wasn't just created for the movie, essentially.
Right.
One of the earliest mentions of the Zozo demon comes from 1816 in the tiny French village of Thiely. There was apparently a young woman in the village who had become possessed by 3 demons. And I'm not sure if she had been using a spirit board or anything, but apparently these 3 demons identified themselves as Mimi, Crapule, and Zozo.
Oh my God.
Now apparently there are some signs one may notice if they actually, in fact, come in contact with this entity. Mm-hmm. It usually goes by he, and will typically spell its name out on the board. Users may notice the planchette may make sudden, rapid figure-8 motions. Or rainbow motions across the board. And as you may expect, the entity will usually present itself as friendly up top. Perhaps even pretending to be, the spirit of a past friend or loved one. Mm-hmm. Gradually, though, the entity becomes more and more antagonistic. It'll go on tirades of profanity and insults, and sometimes will threaten the users that are, playing with the board. Sometimes, by the time users realize what they're dealing with, it may already be too late. Zozo will apparently manipulate the emotions of those playing the game. Players will have reported seeing menacing, lurking shadows in their homes, and these shadows will invade their dreams as well, and even cause mental and physical health problems. It may even move objects around. Full-on possession has also been recorded, people apparently being driven to commit acts of violence or even murder or self-harm and suicide.
Oh, God.
Whatever it may be, it seems as though the entity feeds off fear, which is something we've talked about a lot, other things as well.
Yep.
Well, the modern viral nature of this being, this entity, kind of started to go viral in 2009 with a man named Darren Evans. Darren posted his experience online. I'm not sure if this was on Reddit or his own site. He also co-authored a book called The Zozo Phenomenon, but either way, his tale was terrifying. Darren said he made contact with this entity via Ouija board on several occasions. The first time he did, he asked the entity its name, to which it replied Zozo. Mm-hmm. As we heard before, this entity, of course, at first portrayed itself as friendly, but within days, the entity had become more antagonistic and mean. One night, the entity said that it was going to take Darren and his family to paradise. When Darren asked where exactly paradise was, it spelled out the response, H-E-L-L.
Oh, he lied. Oh God, something's not right here.
Darren immediately jumped to his feet. This freaked him out. Darren ran upstairs to check on his girlfriend and his 1-year-old daughter. But when he got up there, the daughter was nowhere to be seen.
Oh God.
They threw open the bathroom door to find the tub overflowing with water. His daughter was in the tub under the water. He snatched her up out of the tub, and thank God she was okay.
Oh my God.
But she nearly drowned. The family was just rattled by this.
Oh my God.
Darren said that it didn't end there, though. He said that the entity would contact him multiple times and apparently could speak Latin and Hebrew.
Oh,
and it would cause the family all sorts of misfortune. Their daughter came down with a mysterious respiratory illness and needed to be hospitalized. Paranormal stuff happened around the house, from things as mundane as flickering lights to actual violent physical assaults that would leave scratches and bruises on Darren's body. Darren says that the experience nearly drove him crazy and nearly ruined his life. Now, once Darren's story began to circulate, other folks came forward with their own stories and run-ins with this particular entity. He was getting so many people sending him stories that he even started his own website, and there's tons of stories there with audio and visual and video as well. And Darren has even been featured on Ghost Adventures.
Oh.
But on the website, Your Ghost Stories, a poster named April O relayed a terrifying experience she had back in 2012. Well, April had had some friends over one night for a party when they busted out the old Ouija board.
As you do, as you do.
Things started innocently enough until they had come in contact with someone. Asking the entity who it was, it replied, Zozo. When they asked it what it wanted, it gave the awful response, I want her, and somehow indicated one of April's friends. Here, April explains the incident.
The cursor returned to moving from the Z to the O yet again, and I was getting annoyed with this because it wouldn't tell me why it wanted my friend. It just spelled out, I want her, repeatedly. My friend, the one the demon wanted, stupidly called him a pussy, and the board spelled out death. That's when things got bad. I got angry and told her not to provoke him because he was capable of bad things, and I sure as hell didn't want anything happening to my friends. The other friend just sat there, freaked out, not speaking the entire time as we continued to ask it questions, which I don't recall. The cursor began feeling hot under my fingers, and I asked my friends if they felt it too, and they said they did. I asked it another question, but its answer didn't make any sense. It spelled out mama over and over and would not move to any other letters, so I cussed at him because I was getting annoyed. The one friend took his hand off the cursor and refused to play anymore, and the atmosphere immediately changed. I could feel Zozo in the room now, and the air was heavy, and I began to get scared. All of a sudden, I didn't feel like myself. I felt as if something was inside me. I felt the most intense hatred I had ever felt before. I began to laugh hysterically, then cry like I had no control over my emotions. My mood then turned to hatred again, and I turned to look at my friend, the one the demon wanted, with the most evil smile. I felt inside it wasn't me smiling, it was this demon. We all stopped playing the board after that, but the heavy feeling in the air and its presence remained. It took a bit before everything felt normal again that night, and I felt like myself, but when it did, I was relieved. I feared for my friend's safety that night, but fortunately, none of them experienced anything after leaving. My advice? Do not mess with Ouija boards.
Oof.
Good golly.
Damn.
Well, that's another question. If this was an online creation, is Zozo a tulpa?
Exactly.
That's another theory they bring up. And let me give you my sources real quick now that both of these written by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe. One, the true frightening and harrowing paranormal experiences with the Ouija board, and the very strange tale of Zozo, the Ouija board demon.
Damn. Yeah, and it's also interesting too, like not only just a tulpa, but maybe is the reason why as more negative things or frightening things happen with the Ouija board now post The Exorcist. Is it because of this group fear that we have within all of us, because it's just so ingrained in all of us in pop culture to find it scary, and because we all think it's scary, does that make it actually scary? Maybe because of that, it does open up to the other side in some way. I don't know.
Exactly, because like usually, as you guys know, here on Creep Street, we usually go with a little bit of everything.
Yeah, totally.
For some people, is it them subconsciously doing it and it's nothing paranormal? Sure. For some people, is it straight up paranormal? Sure.
Yeah.
It can be more than one thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this, as well as so many other things, it's just kind of all about your intention, and the intention you put into what you're doing is kind of maybe what you'll get out of it.
Absolutely.
But there are so many people that use the Ouija board or a talking board as some kind of a tool for some kind of magical thinking or magical practices, especially Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was very pro Ouija board and kind of as a way of using it to get in touch with the other side, but he didn't really believe in it and ghosts in the way that we've talked about it.
Exactly.
We're going to do a whole Aleister Crowley episode. We'll get deeper into that. But so there are people out there that really still say that this is a very serious tool to connect with whatever. So some people say absolutely do not use this. Some people say just if you're safe, it's okay. But we're going to give you the rules.
We're going to give you some safety tips.
Yes. Okay, this is from How to Use a Ouija Board Safely by Anch Shrivastava at infinityexplorers.com.
Now, some of these are going to just make obvious sense.
Yes.
Like a lot of these, it'll be like, duh. But then some of them are be like, I wish
like
probably
I never would have thought of that, but that makes total sense.
Exactly. It's like people should probably know that. For the record, like we said, we're going to be reading this verbatim.
Yes.
From the source.
Just want to make sure we get it all out. 1. Find the right place to use the Ouija board. To enjoy a session on the Ouija board, make sure to find a place that is filled with positive vibes. Find a place with fewer distractions, as it will make it easier for you and your friends to connect with the spirit. Here are some ideas. Someplace natural, such as next to ponds, rivers, or lakes. You could also hold a session inside of a cave. Places that are associated with happy memories, especially for you, such as gardens, gazebos, or where you got married. Places that feel safe and comfortable, aside from a living room, den, or kitchen. So not a living room, den, or kitchen.
Yeah.
It is highly recommended not to use a Ouija board at home. If you connect to an evil spirit by any chance, the negative energy might not leave your house easily. Getting rid of evil spirits or demonic entities is not easy. Like, that's something that makes total sense.
That total makes sense. But it's like, especially when you're young, you don't have that
You don't have
option,
anywhere else
really.
to go.
And it makes sense you would want to do it in a place where you have good memories, but also a place where you don't fucking live.
Right, exactly. And the place that you don't really mind if some negative entity gets out there.
Exactly. Maybe a place where you have a nice memory, but yeah, not where you're going to fucking sleep at night.
Right, maybe like a park or something.
Exactly.
It is also recommended not to use a Ouija board in a graveyard or where someone has died. It might sound cool or spooky to you, but doing this will only attract trouble. You are likely to contact an evil spirit in these sorts of places. Try cleansing the space around you to get rid of the presence of any negative energies, if any. Here are some ideas that you can opt to clean the energy around you. Place quartz crystals around the board to help cleanse or maintain energy. You can also use hematite, obsidian, or kyanite for protection. Light black candles to absorb bad energy, and you can also light white candles to attract good energy. Burn lavender incense as it helps in attracting nicer spirits. You can also burn frankincense, myrrh, or dragon's blood incense for protection from not-so-nice ones. Sage bundles are commonly used in magical rituals for protection. Draw a circle around you and the board using some sea salt. It is essential to clean the board if it has not been used in a while. One can clean the board using below given ideas. Light some incense or bundle of sage. Let the smoke cover the board and pointer. Draw a circle around the board using your finger or wand, then light a black candle. The candle will absorb negative energy. Next, close your eyes and imagine a bright light. After a moment, open your eyes and blow out the candle. Discard it or bury it. Draw a circle around the board again using your finger or wand. Sprinkle some rose water over the board while saying a simple protective prayer. You can even make up your own.
Now, I'm going to tell you how to set the right mood.
Okay.
I'm going to read the next portion. This is how you set the right mood.
Let's hear it.
One must use the Ouija board only when the participants are in a good mood. It is advised not to use the board if a person feels sick, angry, depressed, or low, as it will only make you an easy target. Spirits can feed off your energy. An evil spirit might use your fear against you. Using the Ouija board while being sick will result in a lack of concentration. Lack of focus will make you an easy target for the spirit, and it might try taking advantage of your situation. Do not use the board with ill intention of seeking revenge. It will only bring harm to both you and your victim. It is advised to use the Ouija board in a sober mood. Do not use drugs or alcohols during or before the session. One should also consider to cleanse themselves before the onset of the session. It will help you dispel any negative energies that might be plaguing you. Use the below given ideas to cleanse your mind and body spiritually. Meditate. Try envisioning yourself surrounded by a bright light. Say a prayer of protection. You can make up a prayer if you like. Take an herbal or salt bath. The best herb to use is lavender, and the best salt to use is sea salt.
All right, the next section is about do's and don'ts. Knowing do's and don'ts is essential. Don't ever try to use a Ouija board alone. It takes at least 2 people to use a Ouija board. Get a friend to use it with you. Having a male and a female in the group is usually recommended. This is for safety reasons, in case something happens to you and you are unable to end the session. It is also for practical reasons. You will need other people to help channel and build the energy. It is ideal to use a Ouija board in a group of 3 to 5 people. 1 person to handle the pointer and ask the spirit questions. 1 to 3 people who are also touching the pointer. They're focusing the energy but not asking any questions. 1 person to take notes or record the session. This will allow the group to analyze the spirit's answers later. Keep focusing on the pointer. The pointer is an extremely useful tool as it will help you to connect to the spirits. Usually it will move to a number or letter, but sometimes it may start to do other things. Watch out for the below given things. If the pointer starts to move through the alphabet or numbers in sequence, the spirit is counting down. Once it finishes, it can escape through the board. You want to end the session before this happens.
This happens a lot with Zozo.
Yes.
You're going to notice a lot of Zozo bullshit in here.
If the pointer travels to each corner of the board, you have reached an evil spirit. End the session immediately. If the pointer starts to make figure 8s, it means that an evil spirit has taken control of the board.
Yep.
Flip the pointer over and end the session. Never let the pointer fall to the floor. This will release the spirit that is moving it. Never leave the pointer on the board once you have finished a session. Always put it back in its bag and store it on the other side of the room. If you see the pointer on the board and no one is using it, flip it over and end the session. Then, store the pointer on the opposite side of the room. Be mindful of the questions you ask of the spirit. If its spirit seems annoyed by a question, you must avoid asking any further questions. Generally, you should not ask questions concerning your death, God, religion, etc. You can ask about the spirit itself. Know that just like humans, spirits can lie as well. One is advised not to believe everything a spirit says, especially if it seems mischievous or malevolent. It is essential to stay polite throughout the session. One must not forget to end the session properly. There are times where the spirit ends the session itself, and if it doesn't, you will need to move the pointer to the word goodbye. This is important. If you don't do this, you will leave the doorway to the spirit world open. Remember to thank the spirit for his or her time before saying goodbye. Respect the spirits. Try not to annoy, anger, or irritate them. One must know when to end a session. There are times when the players are required to end the session earlier than planned. If you, any other participant, or the space around you starts to feel strange, you must move the pointer over to the word goodbye, flip it upside down, and take it off the board. This will break any spiritual connections. Here are other things to keep in mind. Remain calm at all times. If you start to panic, you may forget what to do. The spirit may also sense it and use it to his or her advantage. If the spirit starts to get angry or swear, apologize to the spirit and end the session. An angry spirit is a dangerous spirit. If a spirit uses your name in any way, it is getting dangerous. You should finish the session right away. Keep the board and the pointer safely and carefully in a clean, locked space where no one can mess with it. Keep the pointer in a cloth bag and store it separately from the board. Do not store the pointer at the top of the board or you will risk leaving a portal to the spirit world open.
Now, these, I think, is probably most important.
Yes.
Because most people probably throw it back in the box.
Oh, yeah.
You don't even think about that.
You don't think about it. But, once you hear it like that, you're like, of course, you should definitely keep those separate.
Absolutely.
If nothing else, just to be safe.
That's just things, I thought this was important to read, like we did with the Patreon, just because some of the things, it's like, they make so much sense, but you just wouldn't think about that.
To do that necessarily.
And these last bits are the core, these are musts.
Yes.
These are big. Once again, make sure to say goodbye to end a session. Do this even if you are not able to establish contact. Use the board in a safe space and happy environment. Everyone needs to be on board with this if they want to be involved. If they don't believe, nothing will happen. Best time to use a Ouija board is in the evening close to midnight. The connection to the spirit world is stronger during the fall and winter months, as well as during the summer and winter solstice. And Samhain is also a great time to establish a connection. Mm-hmm. The users should sit facing each other with knees touching if possible, with the board on their laps. Do not use a table.
Oh, that's right. I know, which was like, what?
Or don't use a table. Like, what do you mean don't use a table?
I guess do it on the floor?
Or like on your knee, like your legs,
Wow.
with your knees touching each other.
Oh, right. I know, that's so bizarre.
Only one person should ask the questions. Don't use a table?
I know, that one's like crazy.
That's like where...
Everyone uses them. Like, why wouldn't you? But now it's like, oh, okay, I guess I won't.
Wow.
Dylan, have you ever used a Ouija board?
I have not, but...
But yes.
I have an interesting story.
Okay, let's hear it.
This was the summer between my 9th and 10th grade year, so I had just finished, I was going to be a sophomore in high school. A friend of mine, she was a couple years older, she called me up. She had a Ouija board, and I guess some of her and her friends were playing with it, and she just kind of didn't, nothing like, I don't think particularly weird happened, but she just didn't feel comfortable with it in the house. So she wanted to know if I would come with her to go. There was a trail in my hometown. There was like a wooded area that had trails for biking and stuff through it, and she wanted to go throw it out in the woods.
Oh, wow.
And so she picked me up. We went and picked up some other friends. We were in her family's minivan. And it's funny because, like, in the very back seat was the Ouija board. And we're sitting in front of it, just, like, occasionally looking over our shoulders at it as if it's going to, like, jump up and bite us.
Right.
So we come to the turn. We are driving. We get to where you would turn off to go into these trails. And there's a little place right before you do where you can park. We pull up, and it's dark, And there's a car already there and a police car next to it. And we're like, oh, looks like they had clearly like pulled that car. We were like, oh, well, they're kind of busy. So we pull back out and we leave. And we're like, well, we'll find another place to get rid of it, or we'll just come back there later. Well, that's when we noticed the cop car following us. And all of a sudden the lights go on. We get pulled over. Apparently what happened, the policeman pulled us over because we weren't speeding or anything.
Right.
He goes, no, you weren't speeding or anything. And he looks and he sees it's all like high school kids. And he goes, there was a man back there. Keep in mind, this is in the 2000s. This is before, because now pot's legal in Michigan. Mm-hmm. I guess there was someone back there who was going to be selling some pot.
Oh.
And they were waiting for their person to, I think they were either waiting to buy it or they were waiting to sell it, one of the two.
Oh.
So when he saw a car pull in and then pull out, when they saw the cop car, he thought, oh, maybe that was my guy.
Oh, yikes.
He looks, he sees it's all teenagers. So I'm sure in his brain, he's thinking, oh, I bet I got him or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he goes, can I ask what you kids are doing out this late? And my friend goes, well, officer, we're trying to get rid of a Ouija board. And there's a pause. And then the officer just goes, well, be safe and have a good night. And literally went back to his car. Paused and then just goes, all right, you can go. Didn't ask us another question.
He's like, say no more. You got to get rid of that Ouija board.
And I think we ended up, we stopped it at, another friend of hers. And I don't think I knew who they were, but I think she gave it to someone or something. Yeah. But, so not really a Ouija story of the tradition, because I've always been too chicken. I'm too chicken to do it. But that's my pseudo Ouija story.
That's so funny. Yeah, I played with the Ouija board a lot in my middle school, junior high years. Maybe even a little bit of high school too, but I just didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really know that it was a big deal. I just kind of went along with it with my friends.
Right.
And the friend that I used the Ouija board in her house, a lot of weird stuff has happened there. One thing was that one time we were over there having a sleepover. We were sleeping, me and a couple of our friends, in her living room, and we had a digital camera with us, and we woke up and there were photos of all of us asleep.
That's real weird.
Yeah, then that definitely did happen.
And no one did it? No one.
I mean, we were all in the photo.
But I mean, did anyone in the family do it?
No one admitted to it. I have a feeling that it might have been my friend's mom. I think it probably was my friend's mom.
Oh, because you guys, she knew you had been playing with the...
Right,
Okay.
So it's definitely possible that it was her mom that did it and just never admitted to it because it was, funnier. But regardless, it was a very scary experience.
That's scary.
So yeah, I don't know what ended up happening there, but that's just one of my Ouija board stories. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. I think I'm done. I think I'm Ouija'd out.
Well, Maureen, thank you for doing all of that research.
Thank you for doing all of that research.
It was a tag team effort this week.
Yes, big time.
But God, I'm glad we did, because this was a good episode.
Yes, I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you are all enjoying the spooky season, having fun, enjoying October.
Oh, yes.
The most wonderful time of the year.
Oh, yes. And let me tell you a little bit more about our Patreon subscribers.
Please list off those names, those top tier names,
man.
Please.
I never get sick of it. Ladies and gentlemen, our top-tier Patreon subscribers, of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Alungfist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Barton, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, and the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey.
Dylan, thank you so much for reading off those names. We love you all so much, and thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.